Pac-Man frogs. They are pretty awesome. They are one of the coolest frog species I think you can keep just because of their nature and appearance. They're basically these giant green blobs with these big, flat, very, very sticky tongues. They are kind of amazing. If there was dragons in Frog World, then they would be Pac-Man frogs. Here's my adult female. They can get a little bit bigger than this, but not too much. She might be done growing, she might grow a little bit more. As you can see, she's already huge for a frog. FYI, males will not nearly get that big. They will stay half the size, if not smaller. Females need to be a lot bigger to carry the eggs and such. As far as their care goes, Pac-Man frogs are one of the easiest frog species to keep. So first, let's talk about setup. As large as they might get, Pac-Man frog will never require more than a 10-gallon terrarium. They are great to be kept in very, very small places. This is because they're lion weight predators. They don't actually do a whole lot of moving around. They just kind of sit in one spot and wait for food to come to them. She'll shift around from one side of the tank to the other every couple of days, but she really rarely ever moves and is a very stationary creature. As far as what you're going to put in the terrarium, this is what I recommend for substrate. This is compressed coconut fiber. Eco Earth or Plantation Soil is Zoo Med and Exoterra's respective brands. You want it to be very wet. You don't want it to be so wet that this is like slush. You want it to still clump together like that, like dirt, but you want it to be very, very moist. Should have enough dirt in their enclosure for them to fully bury themselves if they so choose. Mine doesn't a whole lot. She did when she was younger. She hasn't done it a whole lot recently. But just make sure it's there in case they are interested in doing so. Now, they do not need a water bowl, assuming that your dirt is wet enough. If you do put in a water bowl and they're soaking in it, that means that your dirt is not wet enough. They should not need to ever soak. Your dirt should always be moist, not enough so where there's like water like swimming around at the bottom, but moist enough for them to be absorbing water from it. They don't actually drink with their mouth. All their moisture is just absorbed in through their skin, so that's why it's so important that that's moist. Another reason that's really important that it's moist and kind of wet for them is that frogs actually have a lot of respiratory processes that go through their skin, which is a fancy way of saying sometimes they breathe through their skin. And if their skin starts to get dry, it starts to close off the pores, and then they can't breathe through their skin anymore. So that's another reason why it's very, very important for them to be moist. As far as what you put in the setup, you'll see a lot of Pac-Man frog enclosures where it's just dirt and nothing in there. I personally don't like that. I like to give them more enrichment, you could call it. So you can see I just have some kind of like fake plants, and I have this little hide over here set up with this piece of cork bark, and she actually likes it a lot. She loves to sit underneath there. Many Pac-Man frog enclosures don't have any sort of hide or anything of the sort, but I think they are definitely a good thing to add to your enclosure, so just so they have more places to kind of sit and not feel just exposed. I will mention lighting and temperatures, or the lighting and heating, or the absence thereof, at least as far as lighting goes. You can see she has no light on her and she doesn't need any specific light. UVB won't hurt her if you want to do that. I know some people don't have any animals that they don't give UVB, so in my experience, in the care sheets I've read, they don't need any special lighting, so Eliza's never had any and she's still doing fantastic. As far as heating, you're going to want daytime temperatures to be between 75 and 85 degrees, so you have a whole 20-degree range in there. So you have a whole 10-degree range in there. At night, you can let the temperatures drop to 60, 65, not much lower than that. So for some of you, those temperatures might be the temperatures of your reptile room already, which is mine, just because I have so many other heating. The ambience in here is usually between 75 and 85 degrees. If you don't have a room that's that hot, you can heat it up with a couple different ways. You could use one of these under-tank heaters. This one's obviously way too large. Now, I will say you're not going to want to put it on the bottom because moisture could gather there, and for some reason it says not to use these with water. So I wouldn't put it on the bottom, but if you were going to use one of these, just slap it on the side or on the back like that, just to give heat that way. You could also use a ceramic heat emitter or some other heat bulb as long as you turn it off at night. If it's something that's going to be really hot, make sure it's on a thermostat. You don't want them getting fried under light, so definitely not over 85. Keep in mind, if you do have a heat source, especially like a ceramic heat emitter, that is going to drain the water out of this dirt very quickly, so you're going to need to be very, very vigilant to make sure it stays moist, because that will drain it very quickly. She had a ceramic heat emitter on here at one time when the room heating wasn't enough, It drained the dirt out here like crazy. I was needing to pour more water in there like every day. It was ridiculous. Unless you're in the middle of attempting to breed, you should never, ever, ever, ever house Pac-Man frogs together. Period. Even if they're the same size, generally one will try to eat the other one. And if one's a lot bigger than the other one, it'll succeed and swallow it whole. And if they're around the same size, what's probably going to happen is one's going to try to eat the other one anyways, and then one's going to die of suffocation as it's trying to swallow the other. So they are just not good animals to cohabit, period. They eat just about anything that moves. Pac-Man frogs are pretty versatile. You can feed them on... She's taking a big old crap right now. Why are you doing this in the middle of my video? Guess I could show you a shot of that. This is disgusting. What am I doing? This is what you have to look forward to if you're going to eat a Pac-Man frog. So much fun. So diet. What do you feed your Pac-Man frog? They are entirely carnivores, as you can guess. Actually, I don't know if there's any frog that's not a carnivore. I think they're all carnivores. My Pac-Man frog, personally, is fed a staple diet of nightcrawler worms, long earthworms, and then she gets occasional mealworms, occasional dubia roaches, occasional fish. Make sure you're not feeding goldfish or rosy red minnows because they are very high in thiamine. Probably not the best for your Pac-Man frog. A few once in a while is not going to hurt it, but I certainly would not recommend it. Stick with guppies. They do not carry any thiamine, so they make a great feeder fish for Pac-Man frogs. And then she also gets the very, very occasional rodent. Basically, whenever one of the smaller snakes refuses a meal, I don't want it to go to waste, so it obviously goes to her, and she just gets to enjoy that. Once again, you do not want to be feeding that as a staple diet that does not contain all the nutrients that they need. I've heard, I don't know if this is true, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that a diet of purely rodents can actually decrease the lifespan of a Pac-Man frog. Speaking of lifespan, they will live 5 to 10 to 15 years depending on their care and just the individual. You know, some of the age is genetic, it's not always just your care. But they do have the potential to live quite a long time, not as long as most snakes, but still, that's a good length of time for a frog. It's pretty cool. Now that she's finished her business, I guess I can move on into cage maintenance. They're gonna take a big old crap like that once or twice a week. Just clean it out as soon as it gets there. It's big and wet and nasty, and you don't want that sitting in the wet dirt. That's the one thing about wet dirt is it can often be a great breeding ground for molds. So you want to keep it pretty sanitary. If she doesn't eat any of her food, make sure to clean that out, because if there's like a dead insect sitting in there just rotting, that's not going to be very good for them, or a dead fish or whatever it is. I once had a Dorito chip fall in there, and it was just like this tiny little crumb. I didn't even notice it until the next day, but there was a little white spot of mold right around the edges of it, and I'm like, uh-oh. So, you know, just anything in there that mold is going to feed on. You'll even find that sometimes wood, I've kind of tried to keep it above the dirt instead of buried in the dirt, but there is a risk of mold growing on something like that, and if that happens, then don't worry about it. Just take out the piece of wood and you should be fine. And then I do a deep clean where you actually take out all the substrate and scrub the tank and all that good stuff once a month or every 2 months, just to kind of get it fresh and get it clean and all back to normal. Let's talk about handling for a second. You can handle them. If you do so, make sure your hands are moist. Anyways, you can handle them, as you can see, and Eliza's handled pretty frequently, so she's actually pretty good with it. But that doesn't change the fact that she will bite if she gets annoyed at you or if she thinks you're food. So if I wiggled my finger in front of her face, she would probably start biting at it. So they're obviously handleable. It can be done. Don't expect them to necessarily be a fan of it. I've actually worked with Eliza quite a bit, and she's grown pretty accustomed to it. You can see she's not freaking out or going wild like you might expect her to. So she's doing remarkably well, and she has been doing remarkably well lately. So that's great. I wouldn't recommend them if you're going to have a kid handle them. They do have a very strong bite, and they do actually have rows of teeth. So if you get bit, prepare for them to draw blood. I always joke around when people are terrified of the snakes. I said, "Oh, don't be afraid of the snakes. That frog over there is more dangerous than any of my snakes." Because she has and can draw blood with ease. You can see though, she's sitting there, she's pretty okay with it. Sometimes I'll bring her over to the couch, put her on like a little towel, a moist towel or something, and let her watch a movie with me. And she's actually really relaxed. It wasn't always this way. When she was younger, she was really, really screechy.
Oh, yeah, look at that. He doesn't like to be handled, but...
So don't expect them to be great at handling. It's possible, but don't expect it. They can bite, it will hurt, and it will draw blood. So if you're looking for an animal specifically to handle, I don't think I'd recommend it, but they're fun to take out once in a while. Well, I think I covered everything you need to know as far as keeping a Pac-Man frog. Hope you enjoyed this video, found it useful, helpful, interesting, or all of the above. Now, if there's anything I didn't cover that you'd like me to cover, please let me know down in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have, or concerns, or comments, or whatever. I don't know if many of you guys follow me on social media, but I do have an Instagram account where I post all sorts of fun, cool photos about my animals, and basically that's it. It's all just my animals. It's at AA Adventures 2000. I know it's long, I know it's boring, I hate it too. I should change it one of these days. I probably will. Do you guys have any good ideas, by the way, as far as a social media handle? Because I'm kind of stumped. Amazing Animal Adventures is too long for for Instagram to take that as a full social media handle, so I don't really know what to do instead. If you have any good ideas as some way I can condense that without having that super long, annoying thing I have right now, let me know. Anyways, go follow me on there for cool photos. I try to post pretty frequently. And other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a great day.